Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is time for another edition of the RTI Lowdown. Feels like it's been a while since we've been here. It's been a couple weeks since CeeLo and I have been together, but we're back at it. I'm your host, Bob Baskerville, joined as always by my good friend and also one of On3 Sports' finest, Chris Lowe, who is back from not the beach. I think he was seeing some baseball, but you got some sun, buddy. How you doing, Chris?
Yeah, that's what happens when you sit out in those 12 o'clock noon games in the sun. There's no shade, no overhang.
Yes.
But no, I was in Chapel Hill for both the vols baseball games and back today, but not the end of the season that anybody in Tennessee Orange wanted. But I think the sport of college baseball, and I think you can throw women's softball in there too, but with the unpredictability, Bob, of college baseball, and you've already seen that through this tournament to this point, there's no secret why that sport has grown significantly over the last few years. You see really major upsets, and you see teams that are really good and things don't go right, and they're all of a sudden not so good. LSU and Vandy this year. And then you see teams from, smaller conferences who rise up and win games. And it's just a fun sport. It really is, and especially when you get into the postseason and you go to some of these regionals on campus. I love the fact, unlike the basketball tournament, a little bit like football now, the first round of the playoff, that these games are played on campus. Tennessee had been used to obviously hosting regionals, but I've been to the two now that they have played out of Knoxville. I was at Clemson a few years ago when they won.
Yeah.
And it was at North Carolina this weekend. And that was a lot of fun. A lot of really good baseball. North Carolina, a terrific baseball program. And I'll tell you what, East Carolina, what Godwin has done there with that program, really, really impressive. And they got a strong following.
Yeah, you could feel that watching that on TV. They're following. Of course, it was in state, and I get that, but still, for a game on Friday at noon, that was a huge following they had there. So, but you're right about the tournament too. I spent my time this weekend watching some of these games, some of the upsets and everything. It's definitely got some flavor of like March Madness at this point, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it is a growing sport, and
yeah.
I obviously have a son who's on the staff, so I've watched a lot more college baseball over the last 6-7 years than I ever probably did before. And that sort of drew me in. Now, there's an emotional attachment for me, but I find myself on TV just like today, throughout the rest of the regionals, the super regionals, certainly once we get into the College World Series, having been out there now a couple of times, it's a lot of fun. And there's, it's different than the major leagues in several different ways, but I really enjoy college baseball. And again, I throw college softball, women's softball in there too. And what the Lady Vols have done to this point, both sports have, I think, taken off tremendously over the last few years.
Yeah, no doubt. And by the way, if we had done this show last week, of course we didn't because it was Memorial Day weekend, I would have looked like you. I got baked at the Indy 500 last week. I mean, I was out. There's nowhere to go out there.
Right.
You're out in the sun. There's not much cover. And it wasn't supposed to be that sunny, and I didn't put much sunscreen on. And I was that evening, I was like, oh my God, man, I got a red face. But we're back at it after a week off with that Memorial Day holiday weekend, and we do have a lot to discuss today. Vol baseball is front and center. We've talked a little about the tournament already, but we'll focus in on Tennessee baseball. And sadly, it's more of a post-mortem conversation than anything, as Josh Elander and the boys make a quick exit in the NCAA tournament. I think their quickest exit in a regional ever in program history. We'll talk about what went wrong and what needs to be addressed going into next season. And then we'll pivot to some football talk. And here we are, summer's upon us, and the hottest topic surrounding Tennessee football is whether or not a top-line talent and presumed integral part to the team's upcoming season is even going to show up and actually be a real part of the team. It sounds like a repeat of this time last season when we were having these kind of conversations around Boo Carter. This time, we'll talk about the status of Chaz Coleman. We'll also maybe talk a little SEC spring meeting outcomes. I don't know if there was a whole lot to report there, but just a little more, it felt like a little infighting there and a little posturing. We'll talk about that. And then I almost buried the lead, but how about those Lady Vols? The Women's College World Series is underway, and Karen Weekly's crew has already locked up a spot in the semifinals. They are one win away from playing for a national championship. So you can bet we're going to talk a little softball as well. But before all of that, let's give a shout out to our sponsor. This episode of The Lowdown is brought to you by the Tate Insurance Group. If you're in the market for a great locally based insurance professional to help you with your home, your car, or business coverage, you don't need to look any further. It's the Tate Insurance Group. They're here to help, and we appreciate their partnership with The Lowdown. Topic A for today, Vols baseball. After a strong finish to the regular season, the Vols head to Chapel Hill for NCAA regional play, and they are sent packing in a brief 24-hour stay. They lose a heartbreaker in the first game against East Carolina, 7-3 in 14 innings. Chris, this one wasn't about the Vols pitching. We sometimes have been doing some hand-wringing over the pitching for the Vols, particularly late in games. Mm-hmm. Instead, the offense is what failed Tennessee in this one.
Yeah, you knew if Tennessee was going to get out of that regional or make a deep run, they were going to have to score some runs because they just didn't have they were so thin in their pitching core, with Mac not being available, their third day starter, and it hadn't been for really 3 or 4 weeks. So I think they were sort of prepared for that, but they just didn't have a lot of answers. So, what you got to do is you got to go in and score 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 runs. And you've seen that across this tournament. The better teams, Bob, have for the most part, when they need to score 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 runs, they've done that. In Tennessee, just situationally, runners on scoring position, they just couldn't get it done. And you're right, the ECU game was a backbreaker because you get about everything you possibly can out of Evan Blanco. He pitched great in that game. And then Bo Rudy comes in and is probably his best outing of the year. Sat there with his parents, and he was outstanding. And both those kids gave Tennessee every chance to win the game, and you've got multiple opportunities to do so, and you just can't do it. And, you make – I think they get 4 double plays, Tennessee does. You throw a kid out at the plate. You do all these things to sort of hang around, coupled with the pitching, and you can't get guys home. From second and third, first and second, bases loaded over and over again. And when you leave that many guys in scoring position, which you're right, Tennessee had not really done that the last 3-4 series of the SEC season. Now you saw a lot of that early on when they weren't scoring runs and were losing close games. Situational baseball was a problem.
Yeah.
But boy, it really reared its head there in Chapel Hill, first on Friday and then again on Saturday. They got guys on first and second, and guys, the game lasted 4.5 hours, so I don't remember what inning it was. I was just looking for a fan somewhere at that point.
Yeah.
But you hang in there, you get just a spectacular pitching performance from Rudy to keep you right in that game. And you get guys on first and second, no outs. Your senior captain, who has been really clutch for them, came back and played. Reese Chapman, after taking a line drive to the face during batting practice in the SEC tournament, sitting around some people, and he steps to the plate. Of course, the first question is, are they going to bunt him over? Now, he was facing a pretty nasty left-hander, so it's lefty on lefty. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, percentages say you bunt him over, you get guys on second, third with only 1 out. Then all you got to do is get a bunt down, get a ball hit to the right side of the infield, because they're going to play in, obviously, and they did play in.
Right.
And I said this even at the time to a couple of the guys sitting beside me. I said, do you let him swing the first couple of pitches? Do you have enough confidence in your senior? He's been swinging a hot bat. He hit a home run on Saturday. He'd been hitting the ball hard. Let him see a couple pitches before bunting, because even if he hits one hard to the right side. It's going to get through because they're playing way up. Now, and I'm not one to second guess Josh Elander because I think 8 of 10 coaches probably bun him over. Because, again, the kid he was facing for ECU, really good pitcher, lefty, so it's lefty on lefty. And Reese did his job, got guys on the second, third, and they just couldn't get it done. Manny Marin looked like, he was about a foot and a half away from laying one down there on the right side, right along the first base line. It went foul, and then he struck out. You almost, that inning to me, that inability to sort of get that run home in what was just vintage situational baseball, in some ways epitomized this whole season for Tennessee.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that one was questionable, and then the Marin sacrifice attempt, which just went foul, that would have ended the game. The sacrifice bunt. Yeah. But then he swung away after that. And even though the infield was still positioned in somewhat of a shift, there were some things that puzzled me. But one thing that's undeniable was Tennessee, whether it's their approach at the plate or whatever the case may be, in that game against East Carolina, 7 vols struck out 2 or more times in that game, 18 total strikeouts. They were 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position. Like you said, between Blanco and Rudy, talk about strong pitching. That was 11 of those 14 innings were their work. And I thought, did a really, really nice job. And then it's funny, CeeLo, I was talking about this the other day before that game, where I happened to be watching some videos on social media, kind of archive videos of the Vols in the regionals, the supers, the College World Series in the past few years. And I saw the Drew Gilbert home run, the grand slam against Wright State. I saw Zane Denton's home run. That sounds like you were at that game at Clemson. You think about the College World Series that they won in 24, the 9th inning against Florida State. The Dylan Dreiling home run that saved that season in the first game against Texas A&M. All of those things, I thought that it's like, boy, we don't have that kind of player this year. We don't have that moment where we do something where we kind of, rise from the dead. But Henry Ford gave it to us in the 9th inning against East Carolina. That home run with 2 outs, I think he might have even had 2 strikes on him, ties the game up. And at that point, I was like, man, maybe it's a sign. Maybe we're going to win this one. But again, you mentioned it too. On a couple of occasions in extra innings, we had chances where Tennessee could have walked it off, but it didn't happen. And then, as it happens eventually in a game like that, in the 14th inning, ECU has a 4-run inning, and that was the dagger. You could just feel it. The air was out of the balloon at that point.
Well, and you just at that, Tennessee sort of hanging on. Yeah. They were out of arms, and they didn't. You don't have a Landon Mack. And listen, I'll give ECU credit, Coach Godwin. They pushed every one of their chips in on that game. They threw all 3 of their starters. The kid who came in is their ace. They're typically their Friday ace. They didn't start their ace; he started the other kid. So he pushed them all in. Said, "We're going to win this game." Now they ended up losing Saturday anyway to North Carolina in the winners bracket game. But he made that decision. Tennessee didn't have quite that depth in their staff with Mack not being able to go. They'd struggled out of the pen. But, a lot of times on this show on Sunday, we've talked about some of their struggles out of the pen. Not the case at all, because even Appenzeller, when he threw a few pitches on Friday, didn't throw great, but he was outstanding yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He came in and shut them down. He shut VCU down, gave Tennessee every chance to win. And to get, you strike out 30 times in 2 games, I think it was.
31.
Like that. 31 times. And leave as many runners in scoring position as Tennessee did. You're just not going to win at that level. I don't care what seed you're playing in the regional, where you're playing a 4-seed VCU, a 3-seed East Carolina, or even a 1-seed North Carolina. You're just not going to win. And Tennessee won so many games in the last few years, big pops. You go back to the Zane Denton home run. You go back to Drew Gilbert's home run against Wright State. Tennessee's dead in the water at home in that region the first game.
Yeah.
And he hits the walk-off grand slam. So they've had a lot of those type of hits. Omaha, you mentioned them, and they just this team didn't have the pop in their bats. But you got to win other ways, and I think Josh Elander said it after the game. We'll fix what needs to be fixed. And they brought in some guys, pitching and hitting. Blaine Brown did not have. He started on fire, but in SEC play he struggled to hit the ball.
Yeah,
it wasn't in the lineup yesterday, and I thought that was the right call. They brought in Stone Wallace, who had hit the big home run, but he just did not produce consistently. Yeah. He was a big get out of the portal for Tennessee. There were a couple of guys pitching same way, guys that they got in the portal and just didn't produce. And you got to remember now, most times when you make a change at head coach, you're making it in May. When did I'm trying to think, when was Josh named the head coach this past year?
I want to say it was like late October.
Yeah. So, he didn't have a lot of time. He didn't put this team together. This is not an excuse. It's a fact. This is Frank Anderson and Tony Vitello's team. They put this team together.
Right.
There were a couple of pitchers that Frank was not big on that left the program that I think could have helped Tennessee this year. They brought in some guys that they signed off on that just did not produce for whatever reason. Yeah. And then other guys, and there's always reasons. Sometimes you just did Josh Elander make every right call? No. I think early on sometimes you learn on the job a little bit. But I thought no matter what anybody says, he was able to get this team up off the ground. This team could have easily gone the way of Vandy or LSU, and they didn't. They got up off the ground. They won a lot of big series down the stretch. They got into the tournament. They just did not produce offensively when they got into the tournament. Henry Ford, I don't know if it was pneumonia or, he was ill early on, lost a ton of weight. I think he lost 20 pounds. Still had a really good season.
Yeah.
But I hated it for him. But, he had an awful outside the home run. He had one really good swing. But, you could play 20 games and he wouldn't strike out 4 times. And he struck out 4 times yesterday. A lot of times in key situations. There are 2, 3, 4, 5 hitters yesterday they didn't produce. And I think if you'd asked Josh Elander or any of those kids on that team before the game and said, hey, you're going to have these 4 kids coming up in critical situations, you take them getting big hits every time, and it just didn't happen yesterday. Baseball is cruel, or can be cruel in the postseason, and Tennessee just wasn't good enough to overcome some of the things that plagued them this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was like looking in a mirror yesterday offensively against VCU. Another 1 for 10 performance with runners in scoring position. You said it earlier, too. So 2 games in this quick regional appearance. Tennessee goes 2 for 20 with runners in scoring position. Right. Struck out 31 times in like 80 plate appearances. You strike out nearly 40% of the time. It's not winning baseball. And then to compound it, Tegan Kuhns, I thought, looked great early. I was of the mind, I said it to a friend of mine. I go, I think 5 runs will win this game. I just didn't think the other team would have it. But I felt like the way Kuhns started off, striking out the side, I think in the 2nd inning, I was like, man, he's cruising. But it sounds like he had an illness not all of us were aware of. He was under the weather, dehydrated, and so he left early. And so that put us behind the 8 ball. Like you said, CeeLo, Appenzeller looked fantastic in relief on Saturday. 2 2/3 innings pitched, no hits allowed, 5 strikeouts. I mean, just electric stuff. But the problem was, and I know Josh got hit up by the media and others with this, was Tennessee rolled Brady Frederick and Mark Hindy out there right after Kuhns and before Appenzeller. And those 2 gave up the runs that ultimately decided the game. Those guys hadn't really seen much of the field for a while, too. So he put a lot on those guys. Mm-hmm. So it's a game about decisions. We know that. And it's an unfortunate end. I think, I look at the season, they finished 38-22. Like you said, this was Tony and Frank's team. And you know what? It cuts both ways. If this team had been winning and ended up going to Omaha, I think a lot of fans might have said, well, that's not Josh. That's Tony and Frank's guys. He just inherited that. I don't think it's that easy, man. I've been saying that all along. People have been saying, "Oh, he inherited a Ferrari," and it's like, yeah, but you got to know how to drive it too. And he had a lot to learn on the job right off the bat. So,
And they lost a lot of guys in the draft too from last year's
right,
team.
right,
Yeah, they lost a lot of guys. So it was not a, even people close to that team, I don't think anybody felt like this is a team that was a top 10 type of team.
Yeah.
But but then again, if you get a home series and you win some of those games early, 3 walk-off losses to Vandy, you've got Georgia beat there to win the series. I mean, so if you get to 16 or 17 wins and you host a regional, maybe it's a different story, because even some of those great teams Tony had, they had to really scrap to win some of those regional games. We mentioned the Wright State game.
Yeah.
I think they lost to Wake Forest a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, in one of the regional games. Now, they always got out. They were always able to survive, even at Clemson, when Denton hit that home run in the 13th or 14th inning.
Remember, they lost that super regional game to Evansville.
Evansville, right. So baseball at this time of year, man, can be unpredictable. And even when you have some of those stacked lineups that they had in the last few years, you still got to play well and you got to come up with big hits. Again, Tennessee just didn't have the pop up and down the water to overcome, nor did they have the depth in the pitching staff. That's if you have enough arms, you've got that solid third-day starter. I mean, think about if you were able to bring in Mac yesterday when Coons gets sick, because he had been sick. He was not 100%. And I think, battled pretty hard, but it was clear he was being there at the game. He was really dehydrated. And they just, Appenzeller had pitched some the day before. He didn't throw a lot of pitches. And I don't think Josh really wanted to bring him in until the last. He was trying to steal an inning, still 15, 20 pitches. He wanted to bring him in the 7th. But you're right, Frederick and the kid from Duke, 2 guys that they got in the portal that they felt like would be really key arms for them, and they weren't. They did not produce the way Tennessee had hoped. And that's the thing, that the 2 things all year long, and they came and went, is depth in the bullpen, just not having enough arms, especially when you lose Mac, essentially midway through the SEC season.
Yeah.
And then just not having enough guys that when situations presented themselves, and I think part of what Josh is saying, hey, we'll fix what needs to be fixed. You're not always going to have a lineup with Dylan Dreiling and Kevon Tears and Christian Moore, and Blake Burke and some of those guys that are 20 home run hitters.
Yeah.
Your approach at the plate has to be a little bit different. You look at that North Carolina team, for instance. They had some guys. They had a bunch of guys with, 7, 8, 9 home runs, but guys with a lot of really high averages. ECU had a bunch of guys with high averages.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's what you look at. Guys, you bring in guys that have, a little bit more what I would call professional approaches at the plate, and you're not waiting on the long ball sometimes. I think you got to have the right mix. But I know those kids believe in Josh Elander. All the kids that have moved on, Bob, I'm talking about the Christian Moores of the world, all those kids who played for him the last couple of years. You saw what Reese Chapman said about him. Reese is what an awesome teammate, and to see him play for 4 years and have the success he did. I mean, you saw what he said about Josh.
Yeah.
There's no lack of belief in that clubhouse that Josh Elander's the guy to get it done.
Yeah, I was talking on the radio with a guy, and I don't know if you crossed paths with him. He was actually calling the Mississippi State Regional for ESPN. His name's Jack DeLongchamps. Have you met Jack before?
I know. Yes, I know. I know him.
Podcast guy. Yeah, I mean, he's connected. And he's got a lot of affinity and love for Tennessee baseball, and he knew Tony, he knows Elander, all those guys. And we had him on the radio this past week previewing the regional, and he said, from afar, you have to understand, how tough year one is when you're following a rock star. And he was like, he goes, people may not want to believe it, but he goes, by my measure, that was a home run hire. He goes, you just got to let him go through a little bit of growing pains. I think we saw that this season, right? And next season will be critical, of course. And I think that's a good segue to, I want to get your take, CeeLo, on what do we think the needs are? Because we're going to be losing key contributors, right? Henry Ford, Garrett Wright, Tegan Kuhn's more than likely going to go into the draft. Reese, who you mentioned, Reese Chapman, Evan Blanco. Who do you feel the Vols should focus on retaining? And then what do you think the needs should be, like priority one when we go to the portal? Because we obviously need some help there.
Well, they've been really good at retaining players. They haven't lost a lot of players.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times that's as important as who you go get, So Levi, Levi Clark, Stoney Lawless, those guys that you feel like you continue to build around. I think Grimmer's just a sophomore, if I'm not mistaken.
He is, yeah.
What is Marin? Marin's a sophomore too, is that right?
I believe so,
third-year player. But those guys that were position players for you this year, number one, hold on to them. You got to go get some power arms on the staff. They need more power guys, power pitchers, be it out of the bullpen, starters, and then mix those guys with people that maybe have, some of the funky stuff. But this team didn't have as many power arms, I think, as we're used to seeing Tennessee have. Again, I'm not talking just starters, Bob, but guys out of the pen.
Oh, yeah.
That you could bring in for 2 innings and just would shut down people. The version we saw of Bo Rudy on Friday was, I think, what they thought they would get most of the year. And he had, he had his moments. But he's a kid that throws 94 and 95 and 96. So more of those guys. And I think some guys that are going to just be more consistent hitters, guys that Tennessee didn't have a lot of 300 hitters on this team for the whole season. Grenlinger's another one. No, I think he's draft eligible, is he not?
I don't believe so. I think he's.
I know he's a freshman. I didn't know if he was one of those guys that had been out long enough to.
No, I think they've got to, they need to keep
certainly he's one. He's got a brother too.
Yeah, that we probably won't see the brother come. I know he's verbally committed to Tennessee, but
big time prospect.
And then of course we mentioned him already. It goes without saying. I mean, Appenzeller looks like he could be an ace. We gotta work hard to keep him as well.
And there'll be people that will come after him.
Assured.
So keeping those guys like that, the core of your returnees who've played a lot of baseball for you, and then going out and getting some bigger arms. I think some guys that the third category would be guys that are just hitters. I call them professional type hitters. Not a guy who's going to hit 16 or 17 home runs, but a guy that's going to hit 315 or hit 320 to 325. And when there's a guys on second base, when there's guys on second, third, that he's going to put it in play. I mean, he had a lot of strikeouts in key situations this year. So guys that you can count on to put the ball in play, and RBI guys, I was looking at the bottom of the order again for the North Carolina guys and ECU guys. They had a lot of guys who were in their 7th, 8th, and 9th holes. They had 40-plus RBIs, and Tennessee had that, in some of Tony's better teams. Now, the difference was some of those guys for Tennessee are also 17, 18, 19, 20 home run guys. You don't find that a lot.
Yeah.
But I think having guys that are going to put the ball in play and be better situational hitters.
One last question I wanted to pick your brain on. Do we think that because of Landon Mack's kind of shutdown that happened here in the latter part of the season, he's got another year of eligibility, but he could be draft eligible too. But I wonder if maybe his camp is like, we got some unfinished business. It'd be good to get him back if possible, but I don't know how that stands.
Yeah, and I don't know either. I mean, a lot of these kids, at this time of year, you got a lot of people in your ear, and you got some different alternatives now with the portal and the draft. So we'll see. I mean, I think having to be able to get 2 guys like that you could count on the starters, him and Appenzeller, would be a good start, and then sort of build around him.
Yeah.
But they, I was talking to Joe Arnold, the ticket manager at Tennessee, and he brought up a good point. He said, over the last couple of years, Tennessee had guys who came on and were really good pitchers that they didn't necessarily expect to be their aces out of the pen. You go back to the World Series championship team. They had some guys that just emerged that year. and got better and better and better. So I think some of it's development too, and guys that get better and they believe in, and so that's a big piece of it, that developmental piece. But that's the thing is I watch Tennessee play against some of these other teams, even in that tournament in Chapel Hill. They just, again, it's just a fact. When you wipe out your third guy, okay, you just take him off the board.
Yeah,
that in itself is a huge blow. But when I looked at some of the arms that came in for the other teams compared to some of the ones that Tennessee had to bring in, it just wasn't the same. Now that doesn't count Rudy and it doesn't count Appenzeller on Saturday. But other than those two, the teams they played seemed to have better arms and stronger, powerful arms. And that was the difference because Tennessee just didn't come through offensively against those guys.
That Eli Holbert guy with VCU was nasty, man. That was career high. I think he had 10 strikeouts, but he was obviously pumped for that game. They had we saw, so you said it, some really good pitching, man. Ethan Norby at East Carolina was a monster. I mean, that guy had thrown 140 pitches in 2 games the week prior, and he came in relief and was outside of Ford's home run. He was untouchable for the most part.
That's the only good swing they really had against him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And Brown, we were talking about Brown earlier. Brown, he got a little unlucky there.
Yeah.
Probably not the best base running by Reese, but that game's over there too, probably. He squares it up pretty good, pulls it to the right side, right to the first baseman, I guess, right? Line drive.
Yeah.
Double play, line drive, double play, catches Reese on third base. And that's really the only one that Blaney hit hard that whole game, but he did hit that one hard. So if that's 2 feet the other way, Tennessee wins.
Yep.
And so that was unlucky. But again, those things happen in baseball, and you just got to have more than you can't come down to 1 or 2 situations where you got to get a bunt down. You got to be able to score in the I've seen enough baseball. I watched a ton over the last college baseball, the last 6 or 7 years. When you get to the postseason, Bob, and I can't emphasize it enough, you got to be constructed or have the type of team, whether you got a bunch of big boppers, are you really good in situations, are you really good, run scoring, RBI guys. You just got to be ready to score 7, 8, 9 runs every game.
Yeah, I think, so the season ends, and like I said, I know people feel disappointed, and that's okay to feel that way. It's also a testimony to where this program is because we just snapped a string of 5 consecutive super regional appearances, 3 College World Series appearances in those super regional appearances as well. The expectations are high now. And so, again, I think the rub-off from the last thing I'll say, the rub-off from Tony and Frank, like you were saying, it showed in the preseason rankings because there were some rankings that had Tennessee in the top 10. And so we even had a caller on the radio who said that, like, when you start the preseason ranked in the top 10, you should be talking about super regionals and a trip to Omaha. And I would say in most circumstances, that's probably fair. But this was not, again, they did Josh Elander no favors. They were still believing this was Tony and Frank's team when they were doing those preseason rankings. And that's a lot to overcome. But
well, it is. And Josh knew what he was walking into. He wanted the job. His players wanted him to have the job. They believed in him. And the whole preseason ranking stuff. It's so much of it is based, and I've participated in the past, not so much in baseball, but in basketball. And football preseason ranking. So much of it's based on how you finished the year before, and a lot of it who's coming back, what the coach is, and if you looked at Tennessee, who they lost in the draft, the fact that Josh was so late in getting the job, and the construction of this team really was not spearheaded toward him. And here's the third factor that when you play in the SEC, there are just never any guarantees. LSU won the national title last year, and they didn't even make it in the tournament. And again, that's why I say if you really want to step back and assess this season, was it a successful season? No, I don't think it's ever a successful season when you've gotten to the point that this program is, when you don't win a single game in the postseason. Was it a disaster? No. Was it? To me, it's about a B season because of what they could have been. They could have easily just hit the floor and not been a tournament team, and just sort of gotten embarrassed down the stretch by the Texases and Alabamas, the really good baseball teams they faced, Oklahoma. They didn't do that. They got up off the ground and got themselves into the tournament. I think now it's figuring out, as Josh said, a way to sort of fill in those pieces to bolster your pitching staff. Find a way to host a regional next year, Bob, in Knoxville, because you got such a great advantage there with such a terrific stadium, home crowd support, and then see what you can get out of that regional where you go from there.
Yep, most definitely. All right, we're going to roll on here with a little more talk. We're going to pivot to football here in a second. But before we do that, I'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, our friends at the Tate Insurance Group. They are your local insurance team. They are proud to call East Tennessee home. Just like our Vols, they know exactly what it takes to overcome obstacles, to give their all, and show true volunteer spirit for our community. Whether it's home, auto, or business coverage, they provide personal service you can count on. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. They care about what you care about, because this is where they live too. They're right here in East Tennessee. Tate Insurance Group, local, trusted, always in your corner, right here at home. If you want to get some more information, they'd be happy to talk to you on the phone. You can give them a call at area code 865-862-8233. That's 865-862-8233. Or you can go to their website if you want to learn a little more about their services and their products that they offer at the TateInsuranceGroup.com. www.TateInsuranceGroup.com. Again, great bunch of people. We always can't thank them enough for their support of us on the Lowdown. All right, let's talk a little football. And for that, I say, Chris, it seems to me, I said it in the show open, it feels like, where in the world is Chaz Coleman? That seems to be all anybody wants to talk about. I guess with good reason, because this is a big investment for Josh Heupel in the football program. This is a guy who came in with a lot of promise, which is what was befitting of the dollar figure that was paid out to him, which I'm hearing, I think you concur on this, it's more in the $2 million range. Did that sound right?
Yes, I think around the $2 million. I mean, he was going to go, I think he was going to go Ohio State, Tennessee up the ante to get him to come, and it's much closer to 2 than is anything else. And Tennessee's paid him, my understanding is they've already paid him about maybe $200,000, between $200,000 and $250,000 is what they paid him. I think there was an adjustment after the issues in the spring. So the biggest chunk of his money would not come until later this year, after the season, which is good for Tennessee that they're able to get that. So it's not like they've wasted $1 million on him or given him most of his money to this point. But it's, I think it's a big story for a couple of reasons. I think number one, there have been some similar things happen like this with Tennessee, and I think fans get frustrated by what happened with Boo Carter last year, what happened with Nico back in the spring when he didn't show up for workouts. It's sort of it's not the very same thing. It's not apples to apples, but it is a player that you spent money on. In Boo Carter's case, they actually gave him more money, said we'll let you play on offense. He comes back, still's missing workouts, leaves, just like Chaz Coleman left after the spring for a while. So it's a similar type scenario. And in this era of the money being paid to some of these kids, when you transfer, there's even more scrutiny, or more questions, there's more frustration.
Yeah.
In the case of Chaz Coleman, there clearly are things off the field that the kid's struggling with. Okay. It's not just purely he's lazy, doesn't want to go. I mean, there are things in his life that have plagued him. And I'll just leave that right there where it is.
Sure.
Now, I'm not excusing the fact that, he just basically hasn't done much of anything since he's been here. Participate in the off-season program, went through maybe, a couple of, I'm not sure he did any padded practices in the spring. And he was Tennessee's sort of big ticket item in the portal, But the other thing, Bob, sometimes we all we're as guilty of this in the media as fans. they felt like this kid had a lot of potential, a lot of upside, or they wouldn't have paid him the kind of money. But it's not like they're bringing in a guy who's just this proven destructive pass rusher. What do you have? 1 sack or something like that?
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's shown there's tape of him that they liked, and there were some things that certainly Jim Knowles should know plenty about him. He coached him. Anthony Poindexter was on that staff too. But they didn't bring in a guy who had 10 sacks last year, and all of a sudden he's AWOL. So to me, he still was a little bit of an unproven commodity. And I just think, again, it's the fact that it's like if you're a fan, and I do my best to look at things through fans' eyes. You're like, here we go again, and we spent money on this guy. He's not around. Is he going to show up? Is he going to play? If he does show up, here's the thing I would ask. I still think it's very, very questionable whether he plays this fall for Tennessee or not. I know he's in town. I'm not sure what his plans are tomorrow. They have workouts again. Will he be there? I know they've met. They've talked. But, as little as he's done, Bob, both in spring practice and off-season workouts, let's say he did play. Let's say this thing works out, and for the kid's sake, I hope it does.
Mm-hmm.
How ready will he be able to play? How ready will he be able to play come preseason camp in August? And you kick it off there in early September. He hasn't done anything. Football is a developmental sport, man. You've got to be ready year round. You've got to condition. You've got to get stronger. I don't know physically if he's even ready right now to play at the level they would need him to play. And he certainly doesn't have the prep work in. So that would be my question if he does play, and I'm not sure he ever will play for Tennessee, mentally, physically, from a conditioning standpoint, I'm not sure he will be.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, and it just feels like you mentioned it too. We talked about Boo Carter a year ago, and then months prior to that, it was the whole situation with Nico, and this one I know feels a little different. At the same time, all I can think of is, and I hate to put it through this filter, but this is the guy who is the flavor of the day right now. And that is, what would like a Kurt Signetti do with a kid like this? And the reason I bring him up is because you got Derek Owings here, who's the strength and conditioning coach. And you got to believe he's maybe looking at this going, man, are we going to be with this guy or not? For the very reasons you were talking about, Chris, the fact that it's his responsibility to get these guys ready for play. And this guy, Coleman's losing valuable time. I mean, I know there was the picture of him holding all his money on social media, and he looks a little slight of build he looks more like a track and field athlete to me than a football player. And so everybody's freaking out about that too. And I imagine Derek Owings is looking at that going, man, I need this guy to, if we want to be successful, we got to have this development happen with this kid. And there's just part of me that wonders, I'm not saying he's trying to undermine Josh, but I'm just sitting there thinking he's got to be looking at this going, man, this is different than it was with Signetti, more than likely. And I don't know. I feel for Josh, because given the circumstances, given what lies ahead for the season ahead for him, the schedule that this team's going to face, and the expectations in year 6 for him, this is a tough one, man. It's like there's part of me that thinks we should just move on from him right now and do that. But again, I don't know the depth of the situation, so we got to defer to those guys and let them do what's right in their minds. But this one's really, really tough to me.
Well, they may well do that. I mean, as I said, I think it's based on what I know that I've talked to, I think it's very questionable whether this kid will ever play for Tennessee. But I also know, and I've done this long enough to know, that if a staff or a coach thinks a kid is talented enough to be a difference maker, that door's never, ever completely locked.
Yeah.
It just never is. Basketball, football, very rarely. I'll say this about Derek Owings. Derek Owings and Josh Heupel have a long relationship. They've stayed in contact back when Derek was with Josh at UCF. I know getting Owings was a coup and a priority for Josh. And when he did, remember Tennessee made him, I think, the highest paid strength coach in the country. Josh handed the keys over to him.
Yeah.
That was one of the things he wanted to do with this football team. Tougher, more disciplined, stronger, better shape. No more of the what's going on right now. So I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is not going over very well with Derek Owens.
I bet.
And when I say that Josh handed the keys over to him, he did.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one of the agreements in him coming here. And that guy in the weight room, the strength and conditioning department, is around these kids more than anybody else on the staff. He's with them year round. He knows who is going to be the first one in or the first one out. He knows the guy that's going to push himself harder than anybody else. He knows how a guy responds and reacts if he's got some stuff going on off the field or he's had a bad day or whatever. He broke up with his girlfriend. That guy in the weight room knows more than anybody. And I can tell you that this whole situation has been as frustrating for Derek Owens as anybody, because I think they feel like, by and large, that they've had a really good offseason and that people have bought in to the way he wants to do things. First year, that was going to be his stamp. And so, but this is the outlier.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with Chaz Coleman. So I think that to me weighs in very heavily what happens here. And I'll go back to what I said a minute ago. He has the keys.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean he makes the final call. It's Josh Heupel's football program. But I know he's got a lot of trust and a lot of belief in Derek Owens. And this is not just a relationship that goes back a year or two. They go back a ways.
Yeah. Well, and to extend your metaphor about the keys, I was sitting here thinking about it, and I agree with what you just said, that Josh will make the final call, but in a way, you can imagine Derek Owens maybe holds the keys to Chaz's future too, because Josh is going to lean in with Derek and just say, "Hey, man, is this guy up to it?" And I don't know. It sounds like Derek would shoot straight with him. The one last thing I would say about this too, and this crossed my mind, and this is going to be me and you sitting on the front porch, CeeLo, the old guys saying it's not the way it used to be. But you talked about Ohio State offering Coleman money, and then Tennessee upped that offer. With kids at this age getting that much money, is it simply possible too that he just doesn't want to be here, but he felt like, I gotta, you get that money put right in front of your face, you go and you take the money, but then you get here and it's like, I don't know if I want to be here. And, at the end of the day, man, he is still a kid. I know he's getting paid like a full grown man and an adult, but I just think that's one of the challenges in this whole world of NIL and everything else, is we put a lot of money in front of people, and they don't know how to handle it. B, they might not know how to handle their situation in general. It might be like, man, maybe I should have gone to Ohio State for less money. I might have been happier there, but this is where we are now.
I thought this even before NIL, and I think it holds true with football more than any other sport. Because if you've ever played football, you know how tough and violent and how consuming that game is. Man, you got to love football to be a good football player. I mean, you got to love the sport. And I've seen in my years of covering the sport that there are different levels of love. Some guys they'd rather play football than breathe. And some, and certainly the ones that are extraordinarily talented, sometimes they just get by. And some guys that are talented just don't love it, and they get weeded out. And I think that's probably more the case now when you get a kid that's 19 or 20 and all of a sudden he's got $1 million or $2 million in his pocket. How much do you really love the sport? I still think it gets down to that.
Yeah.
How driven are you? How self-motivated are you? Do you love football? I've never had a conversation with Chaz Coleman, but I think it is fair to wonder and ask that question now: how much this kid loves? How much he loves football?
Yeah.
And when you've got that money flashed in front of you, everybody comes from a different background. You did, I did, all these kids that play. You've got different people in your ears. Some agents are good, some aren't good. Sometimes you got uncles and brothers and next door neighbors and homeboys you grew up with and grandmothers and grandfathers who all have sort of different agendas. A lot of times they're the right agenda, you know. I'll go back to Nate Amen's parents.
Yeah.
You know, using a Tennessee example. Jemai Mashak. I mean, Tennessee's been pretty blessed, and not every one of them, but to have parents who are about the right message with their kids. But sometimes it's not. And and especially in football, when you are in the portal, you're a top 10 prospect, and you've got all these teams and agents saying, hey, I can get you, 1.5, you go here. If you go there, I can get you 1.75. I can get you 2.5. Now, how much of that is real? I don't know, but it can be easy to get caught up in that. And because all these kids, this is the other thing that is the worst kept secret in recruiting, especially in football. When you're in the Penn State, Ohio State, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, realm of the world, Texas A&M, every one of those kids you bring in, let's say 19 of 20, when you bring them in, high school kid recruits, certainly portal kids who have played and have some tape, Bob, every single one of those kids think they're going to play in the NFL.
Yeah.
You know, what do the stats tell us? About what? 5% of them will?
Yeah.
If that much? I don't know if it's that high. So if you say, okay, I'm going to school X, I'm getting ready to get paid $2 million, man, I already got my 2. I'm going to make a bunch more when I get to the league. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. You still got to, you got to commit and be invested. And I think it is hard, and it's really difficult. And I think when you recruit kids now and you recruit them out of the portal, Rick Barnes has done a great job of this for the most part. I mean, they've missed on some, just like everybody has. But you better know what you're getting. You better get the right intel, and you're still never going to bat 1,000. But you better know what you're getting as far as a kid who's willing to work and be a good teammate and be coached hard, and not get too caught up in what if you're driving down the highway and you're looking way down the highway, you better be looking at what's right in front of you. And that's harder, I think, than ever to figure out who these kids are when you bring them in, because you don't spend a lot of time. When we had Rick on a few weeks ago, what did he say? Like, when you're in the portal, it's essentially about a 2-week, sometimes not even that long.
That's right.
Process. So you really don't get to know the kids. You meet with them maybe once. You talk to them. You talk to their coaches, their AAU guys, their parents, maybe guidance counselors at school. But in the realm of the portal, sometimes you're 2 and 3 years out of high school. Sometimes you played for 2 different schools. Jacoby Gillespie, he played at Belmont and Maryland before he came to Tennessee, and was a great, what a great pickup he was. So it is very difficult, and I think the better and the more diligently that you evaluate these kids, and it's still not an exact science, the better off it's going to be. But no, I hope it works out for Chaz Coleman, whatever. I don't think unless I'm mistaken, I've asked around, I don't think there's an option for him to leave Tennessee, however he leaves, on his whether he wants to go, whether Tennessee kicks him off, and be eligible to play anywhere this fall.
No, I think, that's that whole blind transfer thing. And I've done some reading on that. It sounds to me like if there's a school that would be willing to take him, they have to accept the risk that they may have their coach suspended for X amount of games. And there's a lot of consequence. And I'm not sure Chaz Coleman's worth that right now.
Well, I don't even know if he could play then. I don't want to be eligible to play this year, this coming season. I mean, is there a loophole where he could go and redshirt and play, and because remember, in the whole, unless it's rev share, coming straight from the school, the NIL money is not a contract with the school; it's with some outside entity.
Well, what's wild? I don't know if you saw this. I'm kind of coloring around the edges, but there's a UCLA student athlete who entered the transfer portal as a track and field athlete, so he could actually transfer somewhere.
I did see that.
And he's going to play football. He's going to elect to play football.
That's the old Bear Bryant. Was it Bryant that used to sign like 100 kids and he put 40 of them on track scholarship or something like that?
Yeah.
I remember Coach Majors back in the day before you had scholarship limits. I think his first year at Tennessee when he came from Pittsburgh, I think he may have signed 90 or 100 players that year.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. All right, real quick because we want to get to some softball before we wrap up, but on college football, very quickly, the only thing I wanted to note from the SEC spring meetings, it was to me kind of uneventful, although Greg Sankey did say that, it feels like he's kind of, trying to deliver his counter to the fact that the Big Ten is having a day right now in terms of revenue generation, 3 consecutive national titles, all those things. It felt like Sankey's kind of towing the line of, hey, top to bottom, we're still the best conference. That may be true, but it felt like he was kind of dodging the real story. And that is, again, that conference has figured out a way to generate so much more revenue. And this whole notion, I know some people have talked about secession, so to speak, from, the SEC from the rest of the power conferences, et cetera. It just feels like there was a lot of bluster at these spring meetings, and maybe you cover these more than I do. I know you weren't at this one in particular, but I know you've got history covering them. Maybe that's just the way it goes at these things, but I just felt like I came away more ticked off than anything.
Yeah, a lot of talking and not a lot of doing.
Right.
Not a lot of decisions made, and what's the old cliche? You meet to decide when you're going to meet again. That type of thing. And I think the SEC is still as good a conference. I think it is as strong a conference as any in America.
Sure.
The talent flows through the SEC. Just look at the NFL draft every year. I think the conference, there are a lot of things that can be true at the same time. That's the first thing I would say.
Yeah.
I think the conference has gotten a little bit deeper. I think it's not as top heavy as it was when Georgia and Bama were dominating there and for 15 to 22. LSU obviously had a great year in 19, but it was top heavy then, Bob. Those schools were better than – there was a pretty sizable gap between those schools and everybody else. I think that gap has closed. A lot of that is the portal and NIL. I also think the Big Ten's gotten better. The coaching in the Big Ten is outstanding when you look at the lineup of coaches.
Sure.
And you've got a school like in Indiana now that I think Illinois too has taken advantage of this, that can go out and get some guys in the portal and pay a little money. In some cases, a lot of money. I mean, you don't go get a Fernando Mendoza for pennies on the dollar. They had to pay big money to get him. I mean, gosh, he's the number 1 pick, the Heisman Trophy winner. I do think the Big Ten is right there. And you know what? What's the old Parcells line? You are what your record says you are.
Right.
Big Ten's won the last 3. They've beaten up on the SEC in postseason games for the most part, including bowl games, which I don't know how much stock you put in bowl games. So I would say this. I think the SEC still – I would be very careful to say that the SEC has lost its fastball. But I'm also not hesitant to say that the Big Ten has caught up. Has it surpassed the SEC? Well, do you want to look at a 3 or 4 year snapshot, a 10-year snapshot? What do the next 5 years look at? We're going to find out. But I don't think anybody in college football wants to hear, whether it's Greg Sankey or a coach or an AD at any conference, saying, well, we're still this or we're still that. Go out and show it. Go out and prove it. Go out and win some games that count. So I love the fact that you've got this sort of swinging a little bit of the pendulum, that the Big Ten is, sort of got its chin up and touting itself as the best, and the SEC feels like, hey, we gotta make our own run. We got to get back. And by the way, this is the last thing I'll say about those meetings. This whole idea of secession, there's nobody in their right mind who wants that. I mean, SEC football is great. I cut my teeth on the SEC football. I don't want to see the SEC play each other every year and then play its own playoff. I want to see a Notre Dame and Georgia play.
Right.
I want to see Ohio State and Texas play. I want to see Tennessee go to Grant Field and play Georgia Tech in Atlanta for the first time in 40 years in week 2.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see, the teams play each other for 11, whatever. And then you play your own playoff and the top 10 teams get in. I understand some of the frustration with the enforcement of rules and the TV money and all that. I'm sick of hearing and reading about it. But listen, that's dumb, and no one wants that. And I don't think anybody, they can talk about it. Bluster is a good word.
Yeah,
that ain't going to happen. And if it does happen,
I agree.
They're just sort of cutting their own throat.
I totally agree. All right, we got to make sure that we give a little bit of love to Lady Vols softball. Is this the year, CeeLo? They, I have to say, it's nice to have one team still alive in postseason play. Classic win on Saturday against Texas Tech. Had a little drama, a little controversy after the game between former Tennessee Lady Vol Taylor Pannell, who plays for Texas Tech, saying that Karen Weekly told her that she made a mistake in the handshake line. Meanwhile, Holly Rowe, who was right there, said she heard Karen Weekly say just good game, which is what Karen stands by. There's video that ABC showed that pretty much reinforces that. All that to say, it was a fantastic game, and what it does is it puts Tennessee in the Final Four immediately in the semifinals, and they face Texas for the second time on Monday afternoon. And Tennessee, the Lady Vols, have 2 chances on Monday, 2 chances to advance to the National Championship Series, which is a best-of-3 series, starting on Wednesday. Feels like they're situated pretty nicely at the moment, CeeLo.
Kudos to Cora Hall from the Knoxville News Sentinel. She wrote a really good story, a column actually, I guess it was, today, on how here we are talking about what someone did or didn't say in a stupid handshake line, and we're not talking about what a great game it was and for the Lady Vols,
right?
Just what an epic walk-off. You think about Lady Vols history. That was as big a home run, as big a moment as they've had in a long time. And as you say, now they're set up to potentially win a national title. And the storyline nationally and everywhere has become, and this is sort of what Cora wrote, has become, she said, they said, or she said, she's, I know Karen Weekly, and you can go online and look at ESPN's got it's pretty clear. You watch them go through the line there, and it did not look at all like Karen Weekly said anything other than good game to everybody. There wasn't enough. Yeah. There wasn't enough time to say, good game, or you made the wrong mistake or made the wrong decision. So I don't doubt that. I don't doubt Karen, not just because this, we're situated in Tennessee. Talked to people there. People that were there now and covering it for TV have said the same thing. Now, did someone say, and we talked about this before, and this happens sometimes in the heat of the moment, did somebody else say that in that line? Did another player?
Yeah.
So was there somebody standing around there that said it? Because when you're in those lines, if you've ever been around them, it's like bam, 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 bam. You're going right beside, hand high fiving or whatever. A lot of things get said sometimes at the back of the line or behind you, 3 behind you. Did someone say that? Potentially. I don't think Karen Weekly said it.
Yeah.
I think what she said is exactly what she said in the press conference. It told Cora of the Knoxville News Sentinel afterwards that she said good game like she does to everybody. I know there's a lot of drama surrounding the fact that she transferred. Texas Tech paid her a ton of money to move out there. Tennessee beats them, in the walk-off. There's a lot of emotions, tensions high. I will say this. Texas Tech Texas Tech still got to play their way back through, right?
Yeah.
It'd make for some pretty good theater to see those 2 teams play again, Bob.
Oh yeah. The only way they'd face each other is in the best-of-3 final.
Right.
Yeah. So,
but no, great for Karen in that program. I mean, she's had a lot of good teams. Is this her most talented team? Is this her most decorated team? I don't know. I mean, they got a lot of pitching, man. And when you've got multiple pitchers like that, different kinds, different styles, that always makes a difference, because in softball and like baseball, some schools roll with, 1 or 2 pitchers the whole year. Tennessee's got multiple girls who can pitch, and I think that makes a big difference. It certainly helps you situationally when you get into a tournament, a double elimination tournament like this. But this team certainly has risen to the occasion when they've needed to. And in the postseason, that's what it's all about. So I look forward to seeing what they do, what they can do tomorrow, and if they can sort of finish this thing out.
Yeah, noon on Monday, and if they win, then they don't play again until Wednesday. If they happen to lose that noon game, they play again just later Monday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a pretty telling day, but it's kind of nice, man. At this time of year, still got something to cheer for, and that's always good. All right, that does it for us this week. As always, we appreciate you giving us a watch or a listen. Which that's a great reminder. If you're watching us on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for the show. If you download us as a podcast, we appreciate that as well. Just make sure you download us, make us part of your regular podcast listening rotation. We are available wherever you listen to your pods. As always, many thanks to our fantastic sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. Now, we'll be slowing down in terms of the frequency of the show for a little summer break because we're on the cusp of the silly season. Sports start to slow down. People start to take some vacation time. Schedules get crazy. So we'll take a little break ourselves as we build towards a highly consequential football season, but you can bet we'll be right here if news breaks regarding the Vols in the coming weeks. And in the meantime, I'd always tell you, if it's happening on Rocky Top, you can count on RTI covering it all for you. Those fellas never sleep. Not like CeeLo and I. We get sleepy, but those guys, they work hard. Keep it locked in on RockyTopInsider.com, and they're also available on all socials for the best Tennessee Vol coverage anywhere. CeeLo, great getting back with you on air, my man. Always appreciate you and your insight. I hope you have a great week ahead, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Let's do it again soon, Bob. Same to you, my friend. Take care.
Sir. Yes, sir. And again, thanks to all of you out there watching and listening for making us part of your routine. We cannot wait to get to football season with you, but we'll be joining you sooner than that, I'm sure. We look forward to joining you again the next time on the RTI Lowdown.